Some people should not be a mechanic. They should throw the tools away. In the first video, we talked about the swinging drawbar saddle that's bolted to the underside of the transmission housing. Hopefully, they just drilled through, threaded the bolt holes, and it's threaded into the housing itself and not through holes with bolts on top inside of the housing. So we're going to go ahead and take those out, drain the fluid of whatever's in there, and go from there. One. Looks like we got some like red Loctite on there that's hardened up. That's a mess. So. Well, that's quite a mess. All right, it's going to take a while for this to drain out, but what I'm going to do is take one of these bolts and see if it threads up in there or if it passes straight through. So we'll wipe this off a little bit and we'll see what we find here. Well, it's not passing through, so that's a good sign. Everything's just so slick with the grease or the oil. Yeah, there it goes. All right, so looks like those were threaded. We'll have to see what the threads are. We'll chase out those holes with a die, actually a tap rather, clean up those threads, and we'll get some threaded plugs to put in there. All right, let's take a look at this plate and see what they did. All right. So this is the saddle from one of the aftermarket kits and bolts, and you can see that they used some pretty substantial spacers here. They actually fit pretty snug. So, I mean, what they did for what they wanted to accomplish, they did it. But obviously that's not the way this was designed to be put together. But you can see it's still fairly new, because right here we can see the store tag for this saddle. So it'd be interesting to know how this idea came about. How did they drill the underside of that transmission housing to get everything to line up? Did somebody do this before that they had seen? They want to try and duplicate it, but I don't know. I just don't see that this would be a very strong connection with the standoffs and everything. It's kind of gooey. Like an old piece of a weed or string or something. I'm not sure if this is the OEM style plug or not, but let's see if this one, no, they're too big. This original drain plug is too big, so we'll see what we can get to fit this. The railroad company called. They want their metal back. Mechanically straighten this lift arm fork down here. I'm going to slide the pin in. You can see how far that's out of alignment. So what I'm going to do is I have a old 24-inch crescent wrench, and we'll see if we can't mechanically straighten this a little bit. It's a little bit better, but now we need to figure out how to get this to bend upwards. So we'll figure that out here in a little bit. All right, so we continued to mechanically bend this with that 24-inch crescent wrench. Ended up putting it out here on this boss area to give it a little more of a twist. And you can see it's almost there for alignment, but the fork is spread out a little bit. So what we'll try is a C-clamp and see if we can't draw this fork in a little bit. Unfortunately, I think it's bending the inside one where I want this outer one to bend. All right, let's see if it did anything for us. It's getting there, but not quite. We don't have the room to run it on this side without taking the fender off. So we'll work on this a little bit more. All right, this is about as good as it's gonna get. We continued to use that big 24-inch crescent wrench to adjust this arm. We used the large C-clamp to draw the sides in. So we have it fairly close. So all but that little bit right there. So we'll see if we can't get this lined up and see if it may tap into place. There we go. Got that in by hand. And we got, I don't know, about 1/16 1/4 inch there. There we go. I'll put a cotter pin in there and say, welcome back, cotter. It's back together. All right, it's been 24 hours since we drained the transmission fluid out of the rear end of the tractor. The bolt holes that were put in for that saddle mount are 5/8 diameter, and the casting was actually tapped at 18 threads per inch. So we talked about putting in some plugs to cover up those areas, and I wasn't able to find the 5/8 by 18. So what we're going to do is I have this 1/2-inch Craftsman drill, and what I'm going to do is put this reamer into the drill, and we're going to ream out those 5/8 holes up into the point where I can use this, what is this, 1.25 by 6 thread per inch tap, so we can get the hole a little bit bigger. And then when we're done with that, because we need it to be fine threads, I'm going to use this 1.5 by 11.5 threads per inch tap. That way it gets some really nice sized holes in there that it'll be even easier to drain out the transmission fluid in the future. So that should really increase the strength and durability of the casting, especially when we weld over the holes that we've put in. So if you believe we're going to do that, April Fools, we're not. So what we are going to do though is use a 5/8 by 18 tap and chase out the threads by hand. We got some plugs to put in there, and we're going to seal them up with the Gasoila thread sealant, and we'll hope that that fixes this farmer's repair. All right, we've cleaned out the threads, chased them out to get them as clean as we can. As we work along, clean out the threads once more, try and get them as dry as we can get them. And again, these are just 5/8 set screws, and we have to be careful that because there's no head on them, we don't want them to go straight through into the bottom of the transmission housing. Then we're going to have another problem to address. So we'll see how this works. Like I said, I put that Gasoila thread sealant on here, and we'll see if that holds it. And we'll let that out just a little bit. Not quite flush with the casting. And I went with this style to make it not as noticeable. Not that anybody's going to be under here looking. But we'll see how this works, and if these end up leaking, there's another style that has a head on it with a crush washer, and we can always do that. We can always weld these full and sand them down to make it look original, but that's a whole lot of work that we don't want to really have to get into. So I'm going to continue the process with the other three, and then we'll put our drain plug back in at the end. All right, now that we got those plugs put in the bottom of the transmission housing, we're going to work on these homemade plate steel running boards with built-in step. You know, I dogged a lot on the original video about the steps and these homemade fabrications, but I get it. It was to meet someone's purpose. So what we're going to do is we'll take this stuff off. We need to take the sway bars off, or the radius rods, I should say. There's 3 nuts to get that off, and 2 bolts through the transmission and rear end housing so that we can drop this out of the way. Well, we see we've run into a problem here. You can see this little tiny pipe plug is right up against the ratchet, so we're going to have to tighten that back up and get a shorter socket. All right, put some grease back in that ball socket, and the cap, you can see, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you can see the file marks here. This is where that foot peg went on. Oh. So that the foot peg came out to match the brake and clutch pedal, but they cut that off. So we'll grease this up and reassemble it. We're gonna have here. So either that or find some better bolts to go in there. So everyone gets the idea. We just need to put 2 bolts back in on each side here. Tighten this up. I'll get the impact and we'll get that tightened up. Alright, we got the radius rod hardware off. Now we're just going to get these 2 bolts out and remove this running board like we did on the other side. One thing that happened when we took the hardware off of this radius rod, the stud that's mounted into the side of the transmission housing, it actually came out. So this fine threaded nut got to a point where it just kind of latched on to the stud and pulled it out with it. So I'll move my tools out of the way, we'll get the step off, and then we'll go back to reassembly. Now, there's a lot of tension on this radius rod. I probably should have taken the bolt out up front. I should have taken this out up here, and that way it would have been a little bit easier to manipulate, but I should have enough play in it where I can get it out just like the other side. I'm using my knee for support because there's a lot of tension here and you don't want to get your fingers messed up. All right, that one's out. Let's put our socket back on. Put the ball back. Well, no, we need to clean this out and put grease in it like we forgot to on the other side, and we'll put it back together. So no need on watching this process again. You already saw it on the other side. One other thing that we did was the repair to this valve stem. I didn't realize that the valve core inside these tractor valves are a little bit different, and I ended up getting a replacement at Tractor Supply. This one is Slime brand, but I did not realize that it had such a substantial core that this entire piece fit inside the stem for filling the tires with fluid. When I tried to air up this tire, the mechanism inside, the little push rod with the spring, had self-ejected, and that's what caused the water leak. So luckily this old valve core spun out easily, put the new one in, aired up the tire, knock on wood, it's good to go. So that one's got the new core in it. This one still has whatever one was in it from who knows when, but we have the swinging drawbar mount all removed, the plate removed from the back side, and as you can see, we got those running boards off, and it's starting to look a lot better aesthetically. So next time we'll go ahead and work on getting the hood off, get it washed up, and work on the 12-volt conversion. Take care.